Today, on World TB Day, we focus on tuberculosis, a disease that continues to be a significant global health challenge. Despite medical advances, misconceptions about TB persist in many communities. But how exactly does this bacteria spread? Is it really as contagious as people fear? And what actually happens in your body when TB infection takes hold? Today, we'll help demystify a disease that has plagued humanity for centuries. We'll help you understand how modern medicine is fighting TB and why misconceptions about this condition continue to hamper public efforts. Welcome to Untangle. I am Amadine Ogbewe. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, as always, I've been joined by an expert on the matter. She is a medical doctor. She's also the founder of Healthy Neighborhood Rural Health Assist Foundation, talking about Dr. Asia Esther. Dr. Esther, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to have you too.
All right, so we'll go straight into it. A lot of people are confused about what tuberculosis is.
Yeah.
Off the top of people's head, what do you think it is that you cough a lot? So let's start from that beginning. How can you break it down for us? What exactly is this disease?
Okay. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease that primarily affects the lungs. It is caused by a microorganism, specifically the bacteria, called the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Like I said, it affects the lungs primarily, but then it could also be found in other parts of the body. That's why it's been termed a multisystemic disease, because it can affect the other parts of the body aside the lungs, like the brain, the bones, and the what they call the central nervous system. So yeah, basically.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that we're already breaking misconceptions because I think some persons thought with the cough and all of that, maybe something that could even be in your throat, so to speak. But it being in different places, that's interesting to hear. I think another concern off the top of my head is about, can it be cured? You know, I think whenever we talk about diseases, when people are watching, they want to know a couple of things. They want to know, can I get it easily? If, as people will say, God forbid, I do get it, can I treat it? Can I be cured? Is it fatal? Or is it something I can manage? I can sleep off, or if I eat well and all of that. So those questions, really.
Okay. Basically, it is a communicable disease, like I said. It can be cured, and then it is also fatal. Now, tuberculosis is a life-threatening disease, which is why a lot of public health interventions are being put in place to ensure that this does not go as bad as it already is. So it is fatal, but then it can also be cured and it can be prevented. So there are certain regimens, medications available to ensure that it doesn't get fatal. There are ways in which it can be detected early and it can be diagnosed, and then treatment can commence. So it's, in as much as it can be cured, it is also a fatal illness. So there are lots of factors that contribute to its fatality and how well the disease progresses.
So why is it a public health worry? You know, because someone might say, I can just treat myself. What's the issue?
Okay. Tuberculosis is one of the leading cause of deaths in terms of infectious diseases. It is only second to COVID-19, which we just experienced in 2020. So before, it used to be like the leading cause of death in amongst the communicable diseases that we have. So that is why it is a public health emergency. So it dates as far back as the year 400, during the time of Hippocrates, which is the father of medicine. So that's as far back as as when we've been having tuberculosis challenges and all of that. So there's been lots of interventions so far to contain the disease, but not yet there, but we're somewhere.
All right, just a quick one now. We hear, or I've heard of something they call latent TB. For those who are watching, latent usually means hidden or not seen and all of that. What does that mean? And then also the spread, if you can tell us a little bit more about that, so people can even start to understand if there are possible precautions to even escape this or getting it?
Okay. So now, latent tuberculosis is simply put having the bacteria or the infection in one's body, but not being symptomatic rather. So one is infected with the disease, and then it goes into the body, and then it begins to multiply. First of all, it goes through the airways and then gets to the lungs, multiplies and all of that. If your immune system is strong enough, it can contain the disease and you won't show symptoms. So that's like a latent phase, and then the person is safe. The person does not really transmit the disease. But then in some cases, there are some people that their immune system is not as strong as the others, because our immune system differs from maybe some diseases that could lower one's immune system, like HIV or malnutrition or other causes. So once the immune system is not strong enough to fight this organism or this infection, it can progress to what is called the active phase and become symptomatic. So that's when we start having the symptoms of tuberculosis, such as the coughing, coughing of blood, weight loss, and drenching night sweat, not just the normal, Abuja is hot currently, but then drenching night sweat, that's the type of heat that we see in tuberculosis at nights.
So are there early warning signs?
Yeah, these are the warning signs. When someone like comes down with the disease, you just notice that the person starts coughing. First of all, the person starts coughing and is coughing out something like blood or something that looks is usually described as rusty colored sputum, which is the color of a rusted nail. So that's how the sputum is the mucus that comes out when you cough. So that's as well. Also chest pain, fever, like having high temperature, and the night sweats, which I mentioned. Yeah, so those are the early signs to pick it for active phase of tuberculosis.
A lot of people will be wishing or hoping that they're one of those who would be asymptomatic. But I think the worry there is, if you're asymptomatic, can you still spread the disease?
No, you can't spread the disease. But then for people in the latent phase, if it is discovered, although it is hardly discovered, if it is discovered without testing, as medical doctors, we usually like to treat. We would treat so that the person does not progress, just to prevent the person from progressing to an active phase where they can spread the disease. The person might be asymptomatic, maybe their immune system is strong enough and all, and then along the line develop maybe something that could lead to immune system suppression and can trigger the disease, convert the disease from latent phase to an active phase. So when that happens, it can spread. So for someone with the latent TB, no, they can't spread. But once the disease progresses to an active phase, they become prone to spreading this disease.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So what would you say is the current state of detection, treatment, handling of TB? I mean, today is a day dedicated to tuberculosis. So it means it's important enough to have that kind of recognition or that kind of focus.
Yeah.
So where would you say how far we are right now? And I mean this in terms of globally, not just in West Africa or Nigeria. Yeah.
Okay, so like I said earlier, tuberculosis dates as far back as ancient times, and there has been trends that has helped the disease to be suppressed and reduced to some extent. But then currently, or will I say in the 19th century, rather, the disease rates dropped drastically due to certain innovations, like changing the treatment regimen, something called the directly observed therapy, where the doctors ensure that the medications for tuberculosis is being taken, adhered to, and while we directly observe it and all of that. While also something called isolation, quarantine, and all of that. So that was also put in place, and that helped to, to contain the disease better. But then sometime in 2020, there was kind of like a
pandemic
drop.
here.
Yes, the pandemic here. So there was like a kind of a drop in the, let's say, the prevalence. But later it was discovered that it was just a drop in statistics. It's not as if it was like the disease was finally winning the battle or something.
Okay.
So as our that was due to the whole pandemic distraction. Everyone was focused on COVID-19 and all of that. So that was why it was looking like there was a reduction in the prevalence of tuberculosis. But then later in 2021, this incidences increased again, and factors that has contributed to this rise in the disease again includes multi-drug resistance, people developing, or the bacteria developing resistant strains that prevents the drugs from actively working and dealing with the bacteria and all of that. So due to that, it's kind of like has increased prevalence again when we talk to we're winning. So it's just like what kind of trying to curtail it, and then the bacteria is now trying to develop new ways and measures to fight back and all of that. But I would say it has, in the developed world, it has reduced significantly. But then in other parts of the world, like the third world countries, Nigeria, Asia, and all of that, there has been not really much of efforts in containing it due to bad leadership, poverty, overcrowding, population, and all of that. So those factors have really contributed in not containing this.
I think let's end this this particular part of the program on the note of the bacteria fighting back. That's something that's interesting to a lot of people, because even during the COVID era, we witnessed it in real time, new strains or variants, as they call them. What's that about, really? And, how is science trying to keep up with that?
Okay, so I don't know if you've heard of something called antibiotics resistance. So it is something that...
Dr. Esther, I think you should just hold that thought. We'll continue right there after this quick break. Sorry, I'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll delve into how exactly bacteria can fight back. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people. And let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah, blah, blah convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in, and let's drive straight into the hearts of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hued Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hued Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hued Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change. Welcome back. All right. So, Dr. Esther, you were right in the middle of telling us how there's a is it antibiotic resistance and all of that. So, what's that mean? Because I think it's on the face of it's a bit scary to know that the thing you are fighting, it can fight you back.
Okay, so on the issue of antibiotics resistance, it's something that we in the medical community, we've been trying so hard to, contain, because it's something that requires everybody's collective effort. So how antibiotics work is that they fight these antigens. Antigens are the microorganisms that cause infection or diseases in the body. So there are certain antibiotics, drugs that has been put out to fight these infections. But then with time, let's say from maybe continued exposure to these medicines, or when people take drugs that are not, they don't complete their dose. I know a lot of people are very guilty of that, that they will take certain medications, maybe malaria drugs, antibiotics, and they don't complete it because they feel they're better. And when you don't complete your dose, you give the antibiotics does not really clear out the disease, and then the ones that are there kind of will I say withstand
they become familiar to what they
exactly, and then they no longer have they are no longer weakened by it because they're already familiar with the drug. And then the next time you use it on yourself again, it doesn't work, and then they grow thicker muscles. They form a stronger strains that fights that becomes stronger than the antibiotics, such that when it's not completely treated, and then you spread it to another person, that person also has contacted the stronger strains and not even the weak strains that they initially had. So they are giving it out to another person that's a stronger strain, and then that stronger strain becomes what spreads around. And then the normal antibiotics that we use to treat it no longer works because it is now the stronger strain that has been spread. So that's how it continues to develop. So same with tuberculosis. The anti-TB drugs was discovered to become tuberculosis became resistant to some of the drugs. That's the first line drugs, the rifampicin and the isoniazid. Those two drugs that were majorly used in fighting these bacteria. At a point, it's some of the strains became no longer susceptible to that, and it became a serious public health emergency. Then began to develop better measures to fighting.
That's really interesting, talking about how that progression is. I think the science of microbes and all of that is quite fascinating. So that being said, there's also this issue about the relationship between TB and HIV. And for some reason, the way you've described tuberculosis now, yes, it does seem pretty dangerous and serious, but it seems like something that could be managed or could be treated. But, when we hear TB and HIV together, it's like that force has become something else. So what's that link between the two diseases?
Okay. So like I said, tuberculosis, active tuberculosis usually occurs in people with low immune system, depressed immune system rather. So the way HIV works is that it lowers the immune system. So people with HIV, it's not necessarily the virus that kills them, but it's the fact that their immune system is low, and then it gives room for diseases to come in, opportunistic diseases to come in and bring the person down. Example of such diseases could be tuberculosis. So now tuberculosis takes opportunity of the low immune system that HIV has caused and can cause infection in that person. So most times, even in the hospital, when somebody comes with tuberculosis, we include HIV tests to the testing because they are closely linked. But that does not necessarily mean that when somebody is coughing or somebody has tuberculosis that they automatically have HIV, but there is a really close relationship between the two, because tuberculosis can only occur actively when the person's immune system is low, and one of the leading causes of low immune system is HIV. So so it's basically weakening
the person for something else to now
Yes.
cause issues.
Yes.
It's a sad one, really. But globally, what region would you say bears the most burden for tuberculosis? And, what do you say about handling that issue, wherever the region might be?
Okay. Tuberculosis is mostly prevalent in African countries, Asia, as well as Eastern Europe. And this is not far from the fact that it's tied to socio-economic reasons. Reason being that these regions are still developing. For Africa, example, we are still not yet there in terms of health. Public health is in shambles in Africa. We also have an issue of overcrowding, because the way tuberculosis is transmitted is from close contact with people that have it. So overcrowding can cause that. Also, low economic status, that's finances, people not being able to afford good food that could help boost or improve their immune system. So that can contribute. And then also corruption from the side of the government, when the government is not putting measures in place to ensure that these public health emergencies being sorted in their countries. So for the developed countries, I think they've just found a way around it. But for the developing countries, they're still far behind, because they lack technologies also to even do the whole isolation, to even make early diagnosis, and then also to provide these drugs needed for the treatments. So
that being said, what are preventive measures for tuberculosis? And I say this from the point of view of perhaps as person to person. You talked about overcrowding. Is it for you to close your mouth? Or I remember back then during the COVID-19 era, we were encouraged to, sneeze into our elbows, social distancing and all of that. On the other side, are there, for people who might not know, are there things like vaccines or I think some diseases have something called, is it prophylaxis, where you use it when you suspect that you have it and all of that. So what are those things in place for when it comes to TB?
Okay, so for the prevention of tuberculosis, like we've identified the causes, which are from droplets of air, like when somebody coughs out, and then they bring out these droplets. So now for one cough that somebody coughs, it can produce up to 3,000 droplets of these infective organisms. And now for somebody to come down with tuberculosis, the person just needs like 10 to be inhaled. So prevention boils down to isolation if somebody already has it. So we need to first of all start with public health campaigns and enlightenment to communities, to people, that if somebody has this, they should first of all start with isolation. Secondly, for people that are prone to it, like health workers, people that live in overcrowded areas, they could use preventive equipment or clothing, like the face mask and then protective wears, that's as well. Also, hygiene, washing of hands properly, and all of that could also help. And then for the vaccine, there's this BCG vaccine, which is usually given to babies at birth in endemic areas, in areas that are prone to tuberculosis, because even in US, they don't really use these vaccines. So it's majorly for we have it prevalent in our society. So so the vaccine just, what does it do? It just protects you from developing the complications that arise with this tuberculosis. So the vaccine helps. It provides immunity, although it still needs some booster. One still needs some booster dose because it wears off after a while. But then vaccination, the importance of vaccination in newborn babies in the prevention of tuberculosis cannot be overemphasized, as it has drastically reduced this incidents in our community.
What about people who have it confirmed? And you say they can still live their life and treat themselves. Does that mean they have to live their life now in isolation? How do they cope?
Okay, the isolation I mentioned is just the person being isolated till the person is treated completely. So now they take this regimen. Like I said, I mentioned something about directly observed therapy. So this is where someone is confirmed, a diagnosis of tuberculosis is made. The person is then isolated or quarantined in the hospital, special rooms in the hospital, and then the person is placed on the anti-TB medications for a minimum of 6 months. So the person is isolated for a minimum of 6 months and they are on the drugs. So when I say directly observed, that's they are taking, the drugs are being taken with the witness of the doctor. So you have to take it so we know that you're actually taking the drugs. And then after 6 months, they go for a repeat test to be sure that it is cleared from their system. So they run these repeat tests. It's called a culture test. So they take it, they do it for like 3 times. So when they have 3 consecutive negative tests, then they can be allowed to go back into the community. So it's not like they have it and it's a death sentence and that's the end. No, they get treated from it completely and then they can still live normal lives.
I think you've already cleared a misconception here, which is that a lot of people believe that when you have tuberculosis, you then go on and live your life the way people who have HIV take drugs regularly, but then you're interacting every day, moving around. From what you're saying now, it's something that you're isolated and you're completely treated before you are basically go back into the community. Society. So that's really interesting. So now there's sometimes issue of stigma attached to this. How do we cope with that? In your experience, how do you think we can, fix that issue?
Okay, so the issue of stigmatization is one that we in the health sector are trying to, create more awareness on. It's not something that can just be solved overnight. Of course, there would always be stigma once somebody knows that, okay, this disease is a communicable disease and I can get infected from it. But then that's why I said health enlightenment campaigns, awareness, and all of that should be done because that would help people, just like you're doing now. People would know that, okay, it doesn't mean that when someone has tuberculosis, it's a death sentence. That's when the person needs all the support in the world because it's not easy being isolated from people and all of that. So that's when the person needs all the care in the world, while also protecting yourself. Like I said, observe all the necessary preventive measures, but also show the person love and
that's fair enough. So Dr. Esther, my final question, sorry to cut you short, is in your experience, what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about TB? And if you could debunk it for us here.
Okay, like we've been doing right from the beginning of the show. Okay, I think one that strikes me more was during my final year posting in school. There was this child that had TB, and then when the child came to the hospital, they had already gone to all manner of religious houses because the child was kind of, will I say, banished from the community, or like it was just assumed that it had a name, but I can't remember, but it had a name, they called it in their local dialect. So it was more like possessed by evil spirits. So most people feel like when somebody has TB, it's a disease from being possessed by evil spirits and all of that. So that is not it. It is just a health condition that can be treated. Also, I've heard from the aspect of people that have tuberculosis being linked to HIV and then being linked to promiscuous people as well. So not necessarily. Majorly, it is gotten from air droplets and all of that. So it doesn't mean that when somebody has tuberculosis and you start looking at them judgmentally, that they definitely have HIV and they must have been very promiscuous. So those are the...
Thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. And I think one of my favorite parts about this interview is how you are delivering all this information with a smile. And I think this must be that, is it the bedside manner that doctors are taught, or is it natural to you?
You could say that. It's also natural. Thank
you so much, Dr. Esther. It's been a pleasant one. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. That's how we end our untangling of tuberculosis. I was speaking with Dr. Esther. She's a medical doctor and the founder of Healthy Neighborhood Rural Health Assist Foundation. And I believe she's successfully broken down some of the issues that are commonly concerned with tuberculosis. Today is still World TB Day, and let's take the rest of the day to reflect, to take stock of the progress we've made so far, how much further we need to go, and what we need to do to get to the end of this, which is at the end of the day, to eradicate this disease or get it to as the most control where it affects as minimal as possible of people out there. Thanks so much for joining us. If you have any issues, any questions, or perhaps even disease you want untangled, leave them in the comment section. And next time, we just might be here to untangle it. Thanks. I am Amadou Nobewe. Bye for now.